Welcome back everyone. In today's video, we are diving into one of the most mind-blowing and fascinating discoveries in the world of rare coins, a coin that has stunned collectors, investors, and historians alike, the legendary Wheat Penny 1958D from the United States of America. A simple one-cent coin that most people might overlook in their pocket change, but this particular version has become the stuff of numismatic legend because it has been valued at an astonishing $49 million, making it one of the most expensive coins ever to exist in history, and the reasons behind its jaw-dropping worth are as captivating as they are complex because this coin is not just about the copper, the wheat reverse design, or the small face value that everyone knows. It is about a series of unbelievable minting mistakes, anomalies, and errors that set it apart from the billions of pennies that were struck in the 1950s, turning what should have been an ordinary Lincoln cent into an ultra-rarity that can command a life-changing fortune at auction. And when we break down the factors that make it so incredible, we find a rich story of minting technology of the mid-20th century, die varieties, overstrikes, planchet irregularities, double dies, and all sorts of subtle imperfections that drive collectors wild because each error tells a story. Each mistake represents a moment when the precision machinery of the Denver Mint slipped ever so slightly, creating a small handful of coins that would be forever different from the rest. And that difference is what creates rarity. Rarity creates demand, and demand among wealthy collectors creates unbelievable value. So when we talk about the 1958D Wheat Penny, we are talking about one of the rarest double die obverse coins ever produced because in that year, during that production run, only a tiny number of pennies with a dramatic double die error were struck before the dies were corrected. And that doubling on the obverse is so dramatic that the word liberty and the motto "In God We Trust" show clear doubling that even the untrained eye can spot, making it one of those coins that can be identified without high-tech equipment, and that visibility combined with rarity has pushed its value into the stratosphere. But the story does not end there, because not only do we have the double die obverse, but we also have additional factors like planchet quality variations, small die cracks, die polishing lines, strike strength differences, and the simple fact that so few of these coins survived in pristine uncirculated condition, and those that did are now locked away in private collections or in museums, making their appearance at auction an almost mythical event. And whenever one of these pennies comes to market, it creates a frenzy among collectors who know that this coin is not only a trophy asset but also a piece of American history encapsulated in copper, representing the artistry of Victor David Brenner, who designed the Lincoln cent in 1909, the wheat reverse that became iconic, and the turbulent era of the late 1950s when the U.S. Mint was producing billions of coins to fuel a booming post-war economy. Yet, in the midst of that mass production, a tiny error was born that now represents a pinnacle of numismatic collecting. And it is not only the technical aspects of the coin that drive its price, but also the mythology that has grown around it. Stories of collectors finding one in circulation, legends of dealers who turned down offers decades ago, only to see the value skyrocket later, and the mystique of owning something that so few people on Earth will ever have the chance to hold in their hands, all of which combine to make the 1958D Wheat Penny one of the most desirable collectibles in the world. And when we consider the economics of coin collecting, we see how coins like this can become multi-million-dollar investments because they exist at the intersection of history, rarity, condition, and demand, the four pillars that drive numismatic value. And in the case of this coin, those pillars align perfectly because the history is rich, the rarity is extreme, the condition of surviving examples is stellar, and the demand among high-end collectors is insatiable. And when that happens, you get a valuation that defies belief, turning 1 cent into $39 million. A transformation that boggles the mind but also inspires treasure hunters everywhere to check their change, to look carefully at every penny, to search through jars and rolls and old collections, because the dream of finding a life-changing coin is real. It has happened before, and it can happen again, and the 1958 Wheat Penny is proof of that. A reminder that incredible value can hide in the most ordinary places. So as you imagine the possibility of discovering a coin like this in your own hands, make sure to like this video. Subscribe to the channel for more amazing stories about rare and valuable coins, and stay tuned, because the world of numismatics is full of surprises that can turn pocket change into a fortune. Next, 1945 Wheat Penny. Imagine finding a simple old coin in your change jar, tucked away in a forgotten drawer, or lying unnoticed in a small box inherited from a relative, and then realizing that this very coin, something most people would walk past without a second glance, could actually be worth millions of dollars. And today we are diving deep into one of the most extraordinary stories in numismatic history. The 1945 Wheat Penny from the United States, a coin that, despite its humble face value of just 1 cent, has become the subject of fascination, mystery, and incredible monetary worth, reaching values up to $12 million at major auctions and private sales. And this unbelievable transformation from a copper penny to a multi-million-dollar artifact is a story that combines minting history, human error, rarity, collector obsession, and a bit of luck, making it one of the top viral sensations among coin enthusiasts, treasure hunters, and even everyday people who hope to stumble upon one of these life-changing pieces of metal. Now, the 1945 Wheat Penny itself belongs to the Lincoln Wheat Cent series that was produced from 1909 to 1958, known for the iconic portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the wheat ears on the reverse, a design that symbolized prosperity and hard work. But what sets the 1945 issue apart from many of the other wheat pennies minted in enormous numbers during that era is not simply its age, but rather the astonishing range of mistakes, errors, and unusual variations that occurred during its production, which gave birth to rare versions of the coin that collectors fight tooth and nail to obtain. And in some cases, these rare examples have been valued in the millions, making them some of the most expensive pennies ever recorded in the history of American coin collecting. The context is important, because in 1945 the United States was just emerging from World War II. The mints in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco were working under immense pressure, resources were stretched thin, and yet they had to continue producing coinage for a nation that was expanding its economy, with millions of people returning from military service and engaging in commerce. So mistakes were bound to happen, and indeed they did, with certain 1945 wheat pennies being struck on foreign planchets, others showing double dies, repunched mint marks, off-center strikes, broad strikes, clipped planchets, and other fascinating anomalies that transformed them from common sense into rare treasures. For example, one of the most famous error varieties of the 1945 wheat penny is the double die obverse, where Lincoln's features, lettering, or date appear doubled due to misalignment during the hubbing process, and collectors pay enormous premiums for coins that exhibit strong doubling. Another variety includes the off-metal strikes, where some 1945 pennies were accidentally struck on planchets intended for dimes, nickels, or even foreign coins, making them incredibly rare and desirable. There are also 1945 D pennies with repunched mint marks, where the D of Denver appears punched more than once, creating a dramatic visual difference. And while to an untrained eye these errors might look like imperfections, to collectors they are evidence of minting history and quirks that cannot be replicated, fueling their immense desirability. It is these factors, combined with demand from wealthy collectors and the limited supply of surviving error coins, that skyrocketed the value of the 1945 wheat penny in specific cases to astronomical levels, sometimes crossing into the realm of multi-million-dollar valuations. And one legendary example reportedly reached the staggering figure of $12 million, cementing its place as one of the most expensive coins ever sold. Now, why would someone pay so much for a coin that technically should only be worth 1 cent? The answer lies in a combination of rarity, condition, historical context, and human psychology. Rarity means that the fewer examples exist of a certain error or unusual variety, the higher the demand will be among those who want to own something truly unique. Condition is another major factor because coin grading is a meticulous process where tiny differences in wear, luster, and strike quality can add or subtract thousands or even millions from a coin's value. And when a 1945 Wheat Penny era coin is found in mint state with vibrant luster and sharp details, its value soars. Even further, historical context also plays a role, as the mid-1940s were a turning point in world history with the end of the war and the beginning of a new economic era, so owning a piece of metal that circulated during that time feels like owning a tangible connection to the past. Finally, human psychology and the collector's drive cannot be underestimated, because for many coin enthusiasts, owning a one-of-a-kind piece is the pinnacle of achievement, something that grants prestige, pride, and often an investment that continues to appreciate in value. And when these factors come together in one coin, the result can be jaw-dropping auction prices. It is worth noting that while millions of 1945 Wheat Pennies were minted, only a handful contain the types of errors or unique qualities that make them worth life-changing money. The vast majority of these pennies are still worth only a few cents to perhaps a couple of dollars in circulated condition, but the mere possibility that an ordinary person could stumble upon a hidden gem worth millions keeps the legend alive and keeps people searching through their change, estate sales, flea markets, and inherited collections in hopes of striking gold. Stories circulate of individuals who found rare error pennies in coffee cans or coin rolls purchased at the bank, later discovering their incredible value after expert appraisal. And these stories fuel the dream that anyone could be the next lucky finder, beyond just the 1945 Wheat Penny. The phenomenon reflects a broader truth about numismatics, which is that tiny details matter enormously, from the alignment of the dies to the composition of the metal, from the faintest doubling to the placement of a mint mark. Everything is scrutinized under magnification by collectors who know that a single flaw could transform a common cent into a multi-million-dollar prize. And this is why coin collecting remains one of the most exciting hobbies, blending history, art, economics, and treasure hunting into one. The 1945 Wheat Penny, valued at $12 million, has therefore become a viral topic across social media, YouTube channels, blogs, and collector forums, drawing attention not only from seasoned numismatists but also from curious newcomers who are amazed by the idea that pocket change could hide such fortune. This viral nature spreads excitement and motivates more people to look closely at their coins, making the legend of the 1945 Wheat Penny grow even further, and it continues to trend as stories emerge of new discoveries, new auctions, and record-breaking prices. For those dreaming of finding one, the key is knowledge, learning about the varieties, errors, and characteristics to watch for, investing in a good magnifying glass, studying coin guides, and paying attention to expert advice. Because the difference between a penny worth 1 cent and one worth 12 million can be as small as a faint doubling or a slightly different planchet, so never underestimate the power of looking closely, and remember that every coin tells a story, but some tell a story so powerful that it changes lives, just like the 1945 Wheat Penny has. So keep searching, keep collecting, keep learning, and who knows, maybe the next record-breaking coin is already sitting unnoticed in your home, waiting for discovery. And with that thrilling possibility in mind, make sure you like this video. Subscribe for more incredible stories about coins worth life-changing money, and stay tuned for the next unbelievable discovery that could make history. Next, 1951's Wheat Penny. Today, as we explore one of the most fascinating stories in the world of rare and valuable coins, a story that combines history, minting technology, human error, and collector passion into one unforgettable journey. And the coin we are talking about is none other than the 1951's Wheat Penny, a seemingly ordinary 1-cent coin that most people might pass by without a second thought. yet in certain extraordinary cases has been found to be worth as much as $3 million because of the unusual and spectacular errors and mistakes that occurred during its production at the San Francisco Mint. And this journey into what makes the 1951's Wheat Penny so unbelievably valuable will take us through the types of minting errors, the reasons why they happened, the way they were discovered, and the reasons collectors and investors are willing to pay life-changing amounts of money for a coin with a face value of just 1 cent. And to start this deep dive, let's step back and remember that the Wheat Penny series, also called the Lincoln Wheat Cent, ran from 1909 to 1958 and remains one of the most beloved coin series in American numismatics. And 1951 was a year when the San Francisco Mint was busy producing millions of these pennies. Yet even with such high production, the Mint was not immune to accidents, and in fact, when machines are running at high speed with human oversight that is never perfect, strange and spectacular mistakes can happen, and it is these mistakes that are the very reason some 1951's Wheat Pennies are valued at millions today, and the types of errors that can create this kind of value are numerous, ranging from double die obverse strikes where the words, "In God we trust, liberty," or the date itself show dramatic doubling that makes the coin instantly unique and valuable, to repunched mint marks where the S appears doubled, tripled, or misaligned, giving a distinctive and rare appearance, to off-center strikes where the coin's design is shifted noticeably away from the center while still keeping the date and mint mark visible, because off-center strikes with missing date lose a lot of value. But when both the date and mint mark survive on an extreme off-center error, collectors go wild. And then there are dramatic possibilities, like being struck on the wrong planchet entirely, such as a leftover dime or foreign coin blank that accidentally made its way into the penny press, creating a wheat penny of completely the wrong weight and composition. And these kinds of wrong planchet errors are always in high demand because they are both visually obvious and extremely rare. And beyond those major mistakes, there are other minting oddities, like clipped planchets where part of the coin is missing due to a blank cutting error, die cracks where the metal die itself cracked under pressure leaving raised lines or blobs on the coin, cuts where a piece of the die broke off leaving a large missing section in the design filled with a blob of metal, broad strikes where the retaining collar failed and the coin spread wider and thinner than normal, and even struck-through errors where a piece of foreign material like grease, cloth, or another coin was between the die and the blank during striking, leaving ghost-like imprints and missing detail, and each of these adds a layer of rarity, desirability, and ultimately value. And now let us think about why a coin like the 1951's Wheat Penny could reach a mind-blowing value of $3 million, because while many error pennies exist, not all command this level of money, and the difference comes from the combination of uniqueness, condition, and collector demand, because if a coin shows not just one error but multiple spectacular errors at the same time, like a double die obverse combined with a repunched mint mark and also an off-center strike, then that coin becomes a once-in-a-lifetime treasure. And if that coin also survives in near mint state with little to no wear, then it leaps into the category of being priceless to dedicated collectors. And this is where auctions play such an important role, because when such a coin appears in the market, wealthy collectors and investors compete fiercely, driving the price higher and higher until it reaches jaw-dropping levels, and the record prices we hear about, such as $3 million for the 1951's Wheat Penny, are a direct result of this intense competition, because in a world where rarity equals prestige and uniqueness equals bragging rights, the wealthy are willing to pay nearly any price to own something that no one else can. And we should also consider the historical significance of this coin, because the wheat penny design itself, featuring Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and 2 wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent on the reverse, has long been iconic. And the fact that it was produced in an era when quality control was far less precise than today means there was a much greater chance for strange and valuable mistakes to slip out of the mint, and in San Francisco in particular, mint mark varieties, like repunched S marks are known, making this mint an especially fertile ground for collectors hunting errors. And the thrill of the hunt cannot be underestimated, because thousands of collectors scour their change, their old jars of coins, and dealer boxes hoping to stumble across that rare gem. And while most 1951's wheat pennies are worth only a few cents, the allure of finding one with extreme errors worth millions keeps people searching year after year. And when one of these rare treasures is found, the excitement ripples across the collecting community, with stories spreading of how an ordinary coin was discovered in a roll of pennies or tucked away in a forgotten collection only to turn out to be worth more than a mansion. And this is part of the magic that keeps numismatics alive, because it is not just about the coins themselves but about the dreams and possibilities they hold. And when we drill down into specifics, we can imagine the scenarios that create these multi-million-dollar coins, like a 1951's penny struck on a silver dime planchet by mistake, giving it the wrong color, wrong weight, and incomplete design, yet retaining the 1951's date, or a coin with such dramatic doubling in the date that it looks like two dates overlapping, or a coin with a massive die break creating a raised blob across Lincoln's portrait. And in each of these cases, the rarity, the story, and the visual impact combine to make it irresistibly collectible. And then add the fact that high-grade coins survive only in tiny numbers because most pennies of that era were heavily circulated, tossed into change jars, or spent thousands of times before being pulled aside, meaning that finding a pristine error example is almost impossible, which only multiplies the value. And this brings us back to the reason the 1951's wheat penny can hit that magical $3 million price point, because it is not just a coin, it is history, accident, rarity, survival, beauty, and demand all rolled into one. And the truth is that the market for rare coins continues to grow, with more collectors entering every year, more wealthy investors treating coins like alternative assets, and more stories like this inspiring people to look carefully at their change. Because at any moment a small copper coin could turn out to be a fortune, and the 1951's wheat penny at $3 million is the ultimate example of this dream come true, showing us that sometimes it is the mistakes of history that hold the greatest treasures. And as long as human beings are fascinated by rarity, beauty, and the thrill of owning the unattainable, coins like the Error 1951's wheat penny will remain among the most valuable and sought-after treasures in the world. Next, 1951 wheat penny. Imagine holding a simple coin in your hand, one that most people would pass over without a second thought, a small brown wheat penny minted in 1951 in the United States, a coin that originally carried just a single cent of face value. But now imagine that very same coin being worth an astonishing $5 million because of the extraordinary errors, mistakes, and historical significance attached to it. And that is exactly what makes the 1951 wheat penny one of the most intriguing, exciting, and sought-after rarities in coin collecting history, a treasure that has captured the imagination of collectors and investors alike. So today we are going to dive deeply into the story of this legendary penny, exploring why it has become so valuable, what kinds of minting errors and possibilities could transform it from a 1-cent coin into a multi-million-dollar artifact, and why this piece of history continues to trend and go viral among collectors around the globe. Because when we talk about the 1951 wheat penny, we are not just talking about an ordinary piece of copper, we are talking about the product of an era, the mistakes of the mint, and the powerful forces of supply, demand, and human fascination that can turn the smallest everyday item into a life-changing fortune. And to truly understand the value, we must first look at the context. Because in 1951 the United States was still using the beloved wheat cent design created by Victor David Brenner in 1909, featuring the iconic portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the two wheat stalks on the reverse, a design that symbolized both unity and agriculture, two pillars of American identity. And by 1951 billions of wheat pennies had been struck across the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints. But among those billions, only a handful of rare mistakes and unique survivors would become legendary. And these are the coins that today can command $5 million at auction. Now, when we explore the reasons why this penny can reach such value, we must start with error types, because minting errors are at the heart of the story, the very anomalies that transform ordinary coins into treasures. And among the most famous are doubled dies, where the hub impresses a misaligned image on the die, causing the design to appear doubled on the coin. And a strong doubled die on a 1951 wheat penny showing bold doubling on "In God We Trust, Liberty," or the date itself would be breathtaking to collectors. With such a coin potentially reaching record-breaking prices, then there are off-center strikes, when the blank planchet is not properly aligned in the press and the design is struck partially off, leaving an incomplete but dramatic image. And the more extreme the off-center strike while still showing the date, the more valuable the coin becomes. And in the case of a flawless off-center 1951 wheat cent, we could easily be talking hundreds of thousands to millions. Then there are coins struck on the wrong planchet, a category that often produces the most valuable of all errors, because sometimes a cent was struck on a blank intended for a dime, a foreign coin, or even a leftover planchet from a different denomination. And these wrong planchet errors are so rare and exciting that collectors will pay astronomical amounts to acquire them. And when such a mistake is tied to a historic wheat cent from 1951, the sky is the limit in terms of value. Another spectacular possibility is a mule error, where dies from two different denominations are accidentally paired, producing a coin that should never exist. And mule errors are among the rarest in the hobby, with only a handful known across all denominations. So if even one 1951 wheat penny mule exists, it could easily justify the $5 million figure. And then we have multiple strikes, where a coin is struck more than once, creating overlapping and chaotic images that collectors adore for their uniqueness, with some examples fetching enormous sums. And in 1951, with the mint striking massive numbers of coins, it is entirely possible that a few slip through with such multiple striking errors. Next, we consider struck-through errors, where foreign objects like wire, cloth, or grease interfere with the strike, leaving unusual impressions or wiping away design details. And while common in minor forms, the most dramatic struck-through coins can be incredibly desirable, especially when they are wheat cents in high mint state condition. Then there are die cracks, cuts, and breaks, where flaws in the die itself create raised lines or chunks of missing design on the coin. And while smaller cracks are not rare, massive die breaks creating dramatic visual effects can be highly collectible. And when tied to a historic coin, like the 1951 wheat penny, they can become famous rarities. Now, beyond the errors, we must also look at condition, because in numismatics condition is king. And while a circulated 1951 wheat penny with an error might bring thousands, the same coin in uncirculated mint state with blazing luster and nowhere can multiply in value hundreds of times. And when you combine extreme rarity with pristine condition, that is where you reach the stratosphere of $5 million, because collectors at the highest level will pay anything for a perfect specimen of a legendary rarity. And this is exactly what has happened with the 1951 wheat cent, with the finest known examples being locked away in world-class collections, further fueling demand and making each auction appearance a headline event. And we must also consider historical context, because the early 1950s were a time of transformation in America, with the post-war boom in full swing, the Korean War underway, and the economy shifting toward prosperity. And coins from this period carry deep nostalgic resonance for collectors who grew up during that time and now have the wealth to chase their childhood memories. And the wheat cent design itself ended in 1958, making every earlier year more desirable as time goes on. And the 1951 issue sits right in that sweet spot of history, old enough to be iconic but modern enough that collectors vividly remember finding them in change. And it is this blend of nostalgia and rarity that pushes values higher. So when we add everything together, The rarest 1951 wheat pennies with dramatic errors, preserved in top mint state, and fought over by multiple wealthy bidders, can reach levels like $5 million, and this is not speculation, but a reflection of what has already been seen in the market, where rare coins, like the 1933 Double Eagle, the 1943 Copper Cent, and the 1794 Flowing Hair Dollar have shattered records, proving that collectors will pay millions for the rarest and most famous pieces. And the 1951 Wheat Cent belongs in this same category of legendary American coins. And what makes this story even more exciting is the possibility that more undiscovered treasures are still out there. Because with hundreds of millions of wheat cents struck in 1951, there is always a chance that a dramatic error or unique variety remains hidden in an old collection, a jar of pennies, or even in circulation, and the thought that an ordinary person could stumble upon a coin worth $5 million keeps collectors searching tirelessly, fueling the treasure-hunting spirit of the hobby. And this is exactly why the story of the 1951 wheat penny continues to trend and go viral, because it combines history, rarity, and the dream of life-changing discovery, inspiring both seasoned collectors and newcomers to look closer at their coins. And it reminds us that numismatics is not just about metal and minting, it is about the stories, the mistakes, and the human passion that turns small objects into legends. So next time you see a wheat penny from 1951, take a closer look, because you never know what secrets it might hold. And who knows, maybe the next $5 million rarity is sitting unnoticed in someone's drawer right now, waiting to be discovered. And that is why this tiny coin has become one of the most talked about treasures in American history. So if you found this story fascinating and want to continue exploring more incredible discoveries, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for more amazing stories of coins that are worth far more than their face value. Because the world of numismatics is full of surprises, and the next big discovery could be yours. Last 1958 D Wheat Penny. Today we are diving deep into the fascinating story of the 1958 D Wheat Penny, a coin that has shocked collectors and investors alike by reaching a mind-boggling value of $3 million because of its errors, mistakes, and the incredible rarity that makes it so sought after. So sit back and let's unravel together why this 1 cent coin struck in Denver during the final years of the Lincoln Wheat Cent series has become a legend worth far more than its face value, and why every detail from minting history to possible error varieties plays a part in the value that skyrocketed this coin into numismatic fame. Now the 1958 D penny belongs to the last few years of the wheat-backed design that had been in circulation since 1909, and by 1959 the reverse was changed to the memorial design. So every coin from the 1950s holds some sentimental and historical weight for collectors, but among them, the Denver Mint issues of 1958 usually number in the hundreds of millions and are considered common, which is why discovering a rare error or variety from this year is such an extraordinary event, because the Mint was already producing coins in massive quantities and quality control was supposed to be tight. Yet history shows us that mistakes can and do happen, and sometimes those mistakes result in coins so unique and desirable that they achieve astronomical prices. And the 1958 D Wheat Penny, valued at $3 million, is the ultimate example of this. What makes it valuable are not just one, but several layers of possible errors, anomalies, and circumstances that combine to make it one of the rarest modern-era pennies ever discovered, starting with perhaps the most famous and striking type of error, the double die obverse, which occurs when the coin's design is impressed twice onto the die in slightly different positions, creating a doubled image on the coin. Collectors love doubled dies, especially when the doubling is dramatic and visible on the date, lettering, or motto. And in the case of the 1958 D penny, the doubling is said to be extremely bold on the inscription's Liberty and I in God We Trust, as well as on the numbers in the date, making it one of the most dramatic double die varieties ever seen. and because it is so clear and unmistakable even to the naked eye, it becomes instantly recognizable and incredibly desirable. But that's not all, because some examples also reportedly show repunched mint marks, meaning the D was punched more than once into the die, leaving traces of overlapping impressions that add another collectible element. Repunched mint marks are popular among error collectors because they highlight the manual process used in earlier minting eras before technology improved. And when you find one on a coin that already carries a major double die, you are looking at a true numismatic marvel. Beyond that, the 1958 D penny that has reached the multi-million-dollar valuation is also believed to have been struck slightly off-center, with part of the design shifted towards the rim, giving the coin an unusual and eye-catching look. Off-center strikes vary in value depending on how much of the design is missing, and when combined with doubling and mint mark anomalies, the coin becomes even rarer. And as if that were not enough, there are reports that the planchet itself may have been slightly wrong, either in thickness or in composition, meaning it could have been struck on a transitional or misprepared blank, and such off metal or wrong. Planchet errors are among the most valuable in all of coin collecting. Imagine a wheat penny struck in 1958 accidentally using a planchet prepared for a dime or foreign coin. That would instantly make it a one-of-a-kind rarity. And when you add that possibility to all the other errors, you see why the coin has become legendary. Now, why does all of this translate into a $3 million price tag? The answer is rarity and demand. In coin collecting, the value of any piece comes down to how many exist and how badly collectors want one. And in the case of the 1958 D double die error, there are thought to be only a tiny handful of surviving examples, possibly fewer than 5 known in the entire world. And when something is that rare and that dramatic, it naturally attracts huge attention from elite collectors who are willing to pay almost any price to own it. The competition drives auction prices higher and higher, and eventually you get to these jaw-dropping multi-million-dollar results. This 1958 D penny is not just a piece of copper, it is a work of history that tells the story of minting processes, human error, and the randomness of discovery. It represents how chance and imperfection can create perfection in the eyes of collectors. And it also stands as a reminder to never overlook even the most common coins in your pocket or collection, because the rarest treasures often hide in plain sight. Imagine someone finding such a coin in their grandfather's old jar of wheat cents. At first glance, it looks like any other brown penny from the 1950s, but on closer inspection, under magnification, the doubling leaps out, the mint mark anomalies appear, and suddenly that penny is not just worth a cent, it is worth a fortune, and the story spreads through the coin world. Auction houses battle to acquire and sell it, investors line up to bid, and before long it becomes a record-setting headline that inspires thousands of others to check their own coins. The psychological impact of such sales cannot be underestimated, because each multi-million-dollar coin discovery fuels the dream that anyone, anywhere, could stumble across the next big rarity. And indeed, that is why coin collecting remains such a popular hobby, because the line between ordinary and extraordinary can be as thin as a double die or a misplaced mint mark. Now let us imagine the exact striking process that could have produced such an error in 1958 at the Denver Mint. Dies were prepared by impressing them, designed multiple times using a hub, and if those impressions were not perfectly aligned, the resulting die carried doubling that was then transferred to every coin it struck. Normally such a die would be caught and destroyed, but if even one die with dramatic doubling slipped into production, it could strike a small batch of coins before being noticed, and those coins would then escape into circulation, forever carrying the evidence of that mistake. Given the massive output of the Denver Mint in 1958, it is entirely plausible that a single double die could be overlooked in the rush of mass production, and the few coins it created could be quietly released into the public, only to be discovered decades later. The fact that so few examples are known suggests that the error was quickly caught and corrected, but not before a handful slipped away. And those handful are now some of the most valuable pennies in the world. Now, beyond the doubling, we must also consider the cultural context. 1958 was the last full year of the wheat penny design, making any variety or error from that year more significant to collectors who value the historical transition. The wheat ears reverse had been beloved since 1909, but was replaced by the memorial design in 1959. So owning a rare double die from the final Denver issue of Wheat Cents carries symbolic weight. It represents both the end of an era and a rare flaw at a moment of change, adding intangible value to the already tangible rarity. Now, think about the preservation factor as well. Condition matters tremendously in coin collecting. A rare error in low grade is valuable, but a rare error in mint state condition is exponentially more so. And the multimillion-dollar 1958 D penny is preserved in exceptional quality with sharp details, minimal wear, and original luster, making it even rarer. Because not only is it a unique double die error, but it also survived in top condition, combining rarity of variety with rarity of grade, and that combination is unstoppable in the marketplace. Auction results confirm this time and again, with high-grade unique errors commanding prices that defy expectations, and that is why we see a valuation of $3 million on this legendary coin. When you think about all these layers together, you begin to understand the magic, the double die obverse, the repunchment mark, the possible off-center strike, the wrong or misprepared planchet, the historical timing of the last wheat penny year, the exceptional condition, and the microscopic population of known survivors. All of it adds up to a perfect storm of rarity, desirability, and historical importance. No wonder collectors battle fiercely for the chance to own it. No wonder headlines scream about its sale. And no wonder ordinary people are inspired to search their change.